Welcome, everyone, to Profiles in Construction. I am your host, Erik Backus. I'm the director of the Construction Engineering Management Program here at Clarkson University. This program is housed within the Department of Civil and Environmental Engineering and is the premier educational opportunity that builds quality graduates to be future leaders, delivering value to the civil infrastructure and building construction industry in order to build a brighter future. This is our fourth in a series of Profiles in Construction this fall. We seek to share stories from people who have made an impact, and we hope to inspire a younger generation to pursue their education and career in an industry that, simply put, builds our world. Today, I have with me Leo Titus Jr., PE 91, Chief Operating Officer of ECS Limited. Mr. Titus is a national leader in consulting engineering, and today will share with us some insights of his decades of technical leadership and industry service, as well as his personal journey. So, as mentioned, Leo is a fellow 90s era graduate of Clarkson University. He'll share with you a lot of different things, but one of the most amazing things I know about Leo is that Leo was one of the first responders to the disaster that occurred at the Pentagon on September 11th, 2001, where he was part of an urban search and rescue team and was one of the technical engineers there helping triage and assess the building for stability as they did an immense rescue operation there at the nation's capital. He's done a lot of other amazing things. Has a strong geotechnical background. I'm sure he'll share a little bit about that. But Leo, beyond my introduction, you want to say a little bit about yourself and give a little more background?
Oh, thanks, Eric. Appreciate the intro. Yeah, as Eric said, graduated from Clarkson in 1991. A little bit about how I got where I am. I'm actually in Virginia. I sit in Chantilly, Virginia. I work for a company called ECS. We're a national engineering firm with offices all across the country. Um, and I'm excited to be here. And I have a part-time job. Eric is my boss. I have a adjunct instructor. I think I'm coming up on my seventh or eighth year of teaching a course at Clarkson. So it's coming up this spring, CE 506. Looking forward to doing that. Um, Other than that, yeah, I've got three adult daughters in their 20s, live in Virginia with my wife, and um, been with ECS now for 28 years. So um, great company. Enjoy being an adjunct at Clarkson. It's a lot of fun. Get to meet a lot of great students, and happy to be here. So I'm happy to answer any questions that you have, Eric.
Great. Well, let's start with your story a little bit. ECS, you kind of sell it short as calling it an engineering firm. It is, certainly does geotechnical engineering, does a lot of that, can do consulting in that way, but you also do a ton of materials testing, quality assurance, quality control support. You provide environmental engineering services, architectural engineering, including forensic engineering services. It's kind of a core part of the construction industry to have a firm like that. It's kind of a interesting hybrid. Maybe you could talk about how you found your way into this industry and what particular interests or experience you had that sparked your interest in trying to do what you're doing.
No, well, it was kind of a roundabout way. I can't say that when I was a kid, I was aspiring to be a geotechnical engineer. I didn't know what that was. I actually was really interested in science fiction, and I wanted to go to the moon, and I wanted to build space stations. So that was kind of where I was going as a kid, and even into high school, I was really interested in outer space and that sort of thing. So I figured if I go to school for engineering, mechanical engineering actually, that that would be a path to get me, to the moon. So so I went to Clarkson, started in the fall of 1987, and I was enrolled as a mechanical engineer. And my sophomore year, I ran into a course called Rigid Body Dynamics, and we didn't get along. So, simply put, we were not friends, RBD and me. So, that summer, following my sophomore year, just by chance, I got a summer job working for a local mason in Saratoga Springs, New York, where I'm from originally, where I grew up. And I was working on construction sites. I was working on small buildings, homes, sidewalks, working on bigger warehouses, just lots of different projects over the course of the summer. And I started thinking about it. the stuff that we're doing, it stands still. And I was pretty good in my statics class. I like statics, but dynamics was, like I said, we didn't get along. So it led me to reconsider my major. And when I went back to Clarkson in the fall of, I guess, 90 as a junior, if that makes sense, maybe it was 89, fall of 89 as a junior, I think. I switched my major to civil, and that kind of led me down the path that I'm on now. So I did, and interestingly, and I talked to a lot of students over the years. I give lectures on different things that we do in our firm. Um, when I graduated from Clarkson, I didn't know what type of civil engineer I wanted to be. I didn't realize how broad the industry is: structural engineering, site civil, water, wastewater, traffic engineering. I didn't I didn't even know what geotechnical engineering was. It was had one soil related class in my undergraduate study, so I had learned a little bit about it, but I really didn't understand that that was a whole career. And we were in a recession in 1991, and I ended up getting a job right out of college with a company. I took whatever job I could get, and it happened to be with a company that in Albany, New York, that did had some geotechnical engineering, and then down in Maryland, and that's where I started getting into that, and I really enjoyed it. So that's kind of how I got into the field that I'm in now.
So from collecting rocks on the moon to now just pounding rocks for a living. I got out of it.
Well, it's funny you say that because my daughters who are now all in their 20s. One day we were watching one of these science fiction movies. I think it was 2001: A Space Odyssey, and at the time they were teenagers. And I said, this movie was one of the things that inspired me to go into engineering. I really wanted to go to the moon, and I wanted to be like those people. And one of my daughters was sitting on the couch. She said, "Well, now you just deal with dirt." Just very, but she's right. And um, yeah, so it's a great field to be in. It's a very important part of the whole construction industry. So it's been a good career.
Maybe you could talk a little bit about that. What has been your experience about how it's related to construction? Because some people don't always see geotechnical or structures and all that in the interaction with construction, but because of what you do at ECS and how it's interrelated, maybe you could talk about how that actually works. What is that interaction like for you, and what's that experience been for you in that
Well,
interaction?
I think an interesting way to maybe explain it, I was giving a lecture actually just a few weeks ago to a class, um, and someone had asked me a similar question, and I was flying to Denver last month for something, and it was nighttime. As we were approaching the airport, I'm looking down. It's very dark, and if you ever fly to Denver, you're flying over a lot of nothing, and it's very dark. And then you start coming into the urban area, and you see just a lot of lights, all these little lights. And I looking down from my airplane window, I realized, or thought occurred to me, that every single one of those lights, except for the ones that are moving on the road, and there were a lot of lights that weren't moving, has a foundation. Whether it's a light pole on a highway or a house or a building or a cell tower or whatever it is, it's got a foundation. So, the everything that we do in construction, um, everything has a foundation of some sort. It's supported, and the interesting thing about the geotechnical side of it is every site that we build on is different than the site next door. And so there's lots of challenges that come up, and interesting. Every project's different. Every project has its own unique thing that has to be engineered or worked through. I mean, you can build the same building 100 times, and the design, the bolts, the steel, all the materials that go into it are exactly the same, but the foundation can be different on all of them. So anyway, that was interesting to me as I started learning about it early in my career, and now looking back, and realizing, yeah, that it's a big part of what we do.
So speaking about looking back, Maybe who are some of the mentors or key figures that shaped your journey, and what kind of role did those mentors or people that were interfacing with you, how did they impact your growth?
Well, it's funny thing again. One of the key figures, and it wasn't a person, early in my career was a split face masonry block, and I was working that summer as a um, mason's helper and getting ready to go back to Clarkson for my junior year. And I had been spending a lot of time climbing up scaffolding with carrying, mortar and split face block, big heavy blocks up and down to build this building. And I didn't want to do that ever again. I didn't want to carry those blocks. So on my last day, it was time to go. I went over to the pile of block and I threw one into my 1983 Honda Civic and I put it in the back. I drove it up to Clarkson and I put it in my room and I put a lamp on it. So when I studied, I look at that block and say, keep studying. You want to get into the engineering side of it. You don't want to carry that block because it's heavy. Um, but yeah, over the years, though, I've had a lot of different individuals that influenced my career, and in ways, some were coaches and mentors that showed me and encouraged me, um, and coached me on how to do my job, and others weren't so much. I just observed them and realized I don't want to do it that way, if that makes sense. So there were definitely people in my career that were a positive influence. They were all positive influences, frankly. But I did observe, and this is important. I tell my daughters this often is to pay attention. They'll call me and talk about their day at work and they had a rough day and some challenge, and I'll say, well, pay attention because how you're going to be in a similar situation, but on a different side of that, and how you're treated as a person or how you manage that situation. Think about how you didn't like it, how it was handled here, and how you would do it differently. So over the years, a lot of different experiences with different people that have influenced the way I do my business now.
I have a part of a glulam beam that I carry. It's in my office here. But yet another story of, it's great to be a laborer, great to be a carpenter, great to do this stuff, but that engineer over there, boy, that looks like a great job. I've carried around that glulam beam since I was in high school. So I know about that split face block. It's a great poignant way of thinking about it. And again, about the ledger of the things you do, things emulate, things that not emulate. So is a great one to think about.
Yeah.
Maybe you could share now about any favorite project you've worked on and what had made it specifically meaningful to you.
Well, I've had a lot of interesting projects, challenging projects, but and you already are familiar with this when you mentioned it early. I think the most life-changing project, frankly, was when I was involved on September 11th with the Pentagon, and then subsequent to that, the year-long rebuilding of the Pentagon, um, that my company and I was involved with. So, just a short summary of that is, I was in my early 30s and I had recently joined the Fairfax County Urban Search and Rescue Team, VATF1. And I was brought on as what they call a structural specialist. And every team is designed to carry a number of different specialties, including engineers, to help with the collapsed building scenarios and what to do. So at that time, I really was green and I was new to the team. I don't feel like I knew what I was doing, but just by chance, and save the long story, but by chance, I happened to be in the right place at the right time, if that's the way to say it, where I was put on the roster. I had to go with the team. We had very short notice, and I was very close by, so they put me there. So I spent a week working with the search and rescue team as an engineer and other engineers, helping to shore the building, prevent further collapse, help during the recovery operations for the entire week. We arrived that afternoon or late morning afternoon at the Pentagon on 9/11 and spent a week there. After I left, came back to ECS, and as a matter of fact, during that time, while we were there, the engineering and construction community was already preparing for the rebuilding. And I interacted with them a fair amount because they wanted to go in to kind of do the assessments while we're still in the recovery and stabilization mode. So we interacted quite a bit, but once the search and recovery operations were completed, they got right to work. And my firm, ECS, was part of that team. We did a lot of evaluation of the damaged structure, and then during the construction phase, a lot of the inspection and testing of the materials as that was built. So it was an important project for me and for my company, but it was an important project for the country. So just because of that, I look back at that on that project and those moments is a pretty important part of my life.
Absolutely. And maybe that also, another question I was going to ask was on the flip side, what's the most challenging? It's probably your favorite project, but it's probably also your most challenging project. But maybe there's other challenging projects you can point to as well that are challenging in a different way.
Well, challenges come in a lot of different ways. I can go down a long list of challenging projects that typically the more challenging projects are those that go wrong for one reason or another, and trying to get it back on track. And one thing I learned very early is when you have a project that goes south, there are big problems, and lawyers start getting involved and all that sort of thing. It's really important as a consulting engineer in our side of the business, to attack the problem and work with the team to solve the problem as opposed to run away from the problem or point fingers and blame other people. That attacking the problem, resolving it, and getting it to a successful conclusion faster is typically going to be a better outcome than dragging your feet, running away, hiding, ignoring emails and phone calls, pointing fingers. It drags things on and can get more expensive. So, but I'll tell you that the most challenging project, if you will, was not an individual project, but it was really more of a management challenge, which happened in early 2020. It was actually February 8th of 2020, to be exact, when we, as a large company, been the victim of a cyber attack. And our entire network across the country, all of our systems went down. And we had to go back to the conventional pad and paper type of work that we did when I first got into the business. And anything technical, anything relying on a computer didn't work for us. So as we, it was pretty amazing to see our people be resilient and figure this out. And because our clients, our building construction is still going on. We still need to do our job. And the most challenging part of that whole situation was, in order for us to get our computers and systems back online, we had to physically sit in an office and our computers be plugged into a wall. We couldn't be on a VPN or virtual network because of the security issues. So that made it harder. Then it really got hard in early March, when everyone had to go home because COVID happened and nobody was allowed to go to the office. So we had a two black swans. We got that cyber attack, and then we had the COVID pandemic all at the same time. But to manage through that and be able to manage, I mean, the simplest project became a huge challenge, right? So, but to manage through that, and as a team, as a large team, and come out of it very positive, and on a positive was very inspiring, and made me really recognize how resilient our company is, and how our management team and how our entire team is at dealing with these types of challenges. So really tough period. I think we had daily phone call meetings with people across the country trying to figure out whatever we had to figure out, and we got through it. So
Yeah, back to the old conference call, right?
yeah.
Conference call and a notepad.
Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, related to resilience, and maybe thinking about this, obviously industry is dealing with resilience and sustainability as kind of topics that continue to come back to us, right? In terms of things in the construction and AEC community broadly. How is that affecting, now coming out of this kind of thing where you're resilient as a company in terms of people, processes, and things like that, but also thinking about resilience in terms of your physical infrastructure for your different labs and offices in terms of that, and of course the materials and things like that you're always processing. Can you speak a little bit about how that's influencing how you all are operating and moving forward?
I think how it influences us is highly dependent how it is influencing our clients. I mean, our physical infrastructure is we're dealing more. Not much has changed in terms of how we do our business. We have, our typical office building will be a few offices in the front of the building and a laboratory in the back of the building to process and test materials that need to be tested. But when our clients are dealing with new or evolving sustainability issues, that oftentimes will impact what our consulting approach would be, and how to help them engineer a solution. So the fundamentals, the technical foundation of what we do, soil mechanics, the environmental consulting, a lot of the fundamentals are still there, but we have to adapt and adjust to what the design needs on the front end, whether it's structural engineers, architects are dealing with a sustainability issue that's going to impact the design. So the building that they did a year ago is changing, so we may have to rethink how that foundation is going to work for them. But for the most part, I don't see a huge impact on us, because we're so dependent, I guess is the best word, on where our clients take us with the sustainability issues.
Gotcha. Is there anything that's specifically engaging you as a company that you see as yourselves kind of being a leader in that relation to that there's something that your expertise and because again, the span of what you do at ECS is kind of unique. Is there something that you see that is contributing in a leadership role to the discussion with your clients, like a value add that you bring to your clients that they wouldn't otherwise get anywhere else?
Sure. I mean, there are a number of service lines that we've been getting into to support our clients, and I can speak to some of them, but it'll be very limited, as I'm not the technical expert on a lot of these things. But one example would be water treatment. As we build, for example, we build buildings, or there are buildings being built in DC, and in DC they have a relatively low water table. So if you have a basement, you're going to have a pretty large dewatering and a constant dewatering of that site during the life cycle of the building. And that dewatering process may contain a lot of contaminants. It may contain PFAS and things that need to be cleaned before that water can be disposed of in a public area, in a regular area, without being considered contaminated. So we have teams of environmental scientists and engineers that have been developing processes to, as that water is being developed, to filter through and clean that water and be able to discharge that water into storm sewers and be totally clean, and it's perfectly fine. So we didn't do that 10 years ago. Um, and using new technologies like well AI is an example of it's less sustainability, but it's more of an efficiency and adapting to the technology that's available. LiDAR and other technologies that have developed that help us assess and see things from different angles and from a different perspective. We look and find these technologies. We've got groups of people, especially people that are really passionate about these technologies, to get in and figure out how can we take this technology and help our clients provide more value to their project. So it's a number of different things, but I think that water treatment is one of the more exciting ones that we started just a few years ago, and seeing the demand across the country for those types of services, I think will be very helpful for folks.
Gotcha. Well, thank you for sharing a little bit about that. Maybe your allowance that you're not the technical expert as you began to answer that part of the question. That question might be really great lead into my next question is, being a chief operating officer is a very interesting kind of role. How did you get there? And then, what is that role and what does that mean in a kind of firm like you have, and how have you been filling it?
How did I get there? I think, early in my career, I was on, when I graduated from Clarkson, I had a degree in civil engineering, civil and environmental engineering, and I had a technical degree. And I planned to be an engineer. I didn't have any, maybe very little business training, the business side of the business, but what I learned early in my career is I was good at hiring people that are smarter than me. So when you hire people that are smarter than you and let them do what they're really good at, like water treatment, um, it takes off. So I think I had a choice early in my career. Do I want to go down the technical path, or do I want to be on more the business management side of the business? And I stuck with the technical involvement in projects, licensed professional engineer, master's in geotechnical, worked on a lot of different projects. But at some point during my career, as the company grew, and that was I think a driver of how I got into the role I'm in, is the company was growing fast. When I joined the company in 1997, I think we had 10 offices and I don't know, maybe 200, 250 people. Now we have over 100 locations. We've got over 3,000 people. And as the company grows and expands, opportunities grow and expand. You need more people who are helping manage and run that business. So earlier in my career, I was leaning in that direction. I was helping build the business. As the business grew, we needed more help. So it was almost for me a natural progression into these roles. I don't know if that.
Yeah, no. I think being aware of the fact that at some level, every firm that's out there has to be a business. And so while you're a technical expert, there's got to be folks who bring in the cash to allow you to do the technical work you need to do. And so having the cognizance of that, and then being there at, when you're only 10 offices and you eventually become the office leader for one of them, and then it's a growing business, being in a position where you want to grow with that organization and giving you the chance to grow, because you've been at ECS now for a couple of days.
Yeah,
Be Well, it'll be your 40th anniversary, of being there, right? I mean, that's pretty kind of, that's quite to say something. So, that's another thing to ask. You stay with the same company for a long time. What has kept you there, and why stay with that company, and why stay with this place, and make the impact you're having there?
Well, you know, it's a great question. I early in my career, I started with another company, and and excuse me, I think I was learning a lot at that company, but I kind of what I was saying earlier, there were things that I was learning that I didn't agree with, right? I thought, I don't know if I, would do it that way. And and at some point, I decided I was ready for a change, and I joined ECS. And I joined ECS as a prod. I wanted to learn engineering, and that was part of my problem at my previous company, as I wasn't learning engineering. I didn't have those technical mentors to help. And when I got to ECS, it was a smaller company, much smaller company at the time, and it was owned and managed by engineers, which was not the case in previous companies. So there was a completely different approach to how we did things, which uh, I liked and I agreed with, and it's been that way ever since. I mean, we've grown as a company, but we're still an employee-owned company. We're still managed by engineers and people with technical backgrounds, geologists and scientists. Um, so, it's a challenge to, to the hard part really is for, I think this is a broad statement to the engineering and communities. There's a reason why, we have thousands and thousands and thousands of engineering companies in the country, and most of them are really small. Um, and and they're good companies. Um, but engineers aren't always the best business people, right? So when you combine really smart and good engineering team with really smart business people, you have a combination for potential growth, and that's what we have, and we still have. So we've got very strong business foundation, very strong fundamentals to managing our business, but also to the technical quality and those sorts of things that make it a successful thing. So why would I leave that, right? So the question is, why would you stay? I mean, if you've got all the right things for your career and you like the people you work with, why would I leave? So it's been a great place to work for 28 years.
Yeah, yeah. I think a big part of it is what you're trying to kind of touching on is culture and how important culture is within organizations and the kind of people you want to work with, the kind of approach and mindset people have, and the willingness for that for you to be able to grow in the way you want to grow and be in a culture that fits you as your background, your values the same way. Maybe you can speak a little bit about that. What are the values that are driving you, that at your institution and drove you personally, but also drive you at ECS that make that unique mark for the industry?
Well, you know, some of the core values of integrity. I mean, we we are about taking care of our customers, our clients, and taking care of our people. I mean, those are the two probably biggest core values. If we do those two things well, growth is a natural outcome, right? So um, we don't focus on growth and saying, oh, we have to grow, we have to grow. We focus on the fundamentals. And if we do a good job at those fundamentals of taking care of our clients, which means getting our deliverables out on time, which means answering the phone and the emails, timely, which means going and visiting them and trying to make sure you understand what their challenges are, so you can incorporate that into your deliverables. Taking care of our people, safety, making sure that everybody's safe. making sure that people have a career path that they can see a growth with the company long term. You do those things, you focus on those things, and we're not perfect. We have our challenges. We are always looking to be better at these things. But focusing on those core things will, if we're successful there, we'll be successful on the profit and growth side of the equation. So,
So how do you make that a reality that you stay on the fundamentals as a chief operating officer? I would think one of your key roles, since you're not the CEO, so you're not strategic vision, you're kind of making sure all the trains are leaving on time, so to speak. How do you make sure that those fundamentals are being attended to, and what's your day-to-day role to make that happen?
well, good question, and I think you kind of just described it. Is we determine what are the metrics that are important to us. What are the metrics that the KPIs, right? The key, what are
Key
they? Key
performance
performance
indicators.
indicators. Um, what are those KPIs, those key metrics that we want to focus on that we know will drive the success? And and really a lot of that is making sure everyone understands what those are, why they're important, which is really the harder part sometimes. You can tell people these metrics are important, but if they don't understand why are they making us do that? Why do I have to do that? If you explain the why, oh, that makes sense, then it's easier to get the buy-in to do that. So there's a number of key metrics that we will focus on in my job, and I'm very fortunate to have a team of senior managers, geographically organized, that work with their teams on those metrics. Um, and when we have new initiatives, had a meeting earlier this morning. We've got a new initiative for a system that we're going to be implementing to help improve our client delivery, and again, trying to improve that core part of our business of taking care of our clients, and personally getting involved with making sure that rollout to the company is successful with training and messaging, and then ultimately holding folks accountable and saying, okay, we didn't hit these metrics. Again, I'm not looking at profit and growth metrics. I don't look at this. I look at them, but that's not what I'm looking at when I'm talking to the people. I'm looking at, time to get a report out the door. I'm looking at clients, talking to your clients, making sure, we've talked, we're talking to our clients. We call them client contacts. Um, Looking at safety metrics. Are we doing our safety observations? I'm looking at our quality and our calibrations, our lab accreditation, things that drive, the standard quality of what we do. So there's a lot of things there that are fundamental to our business. If we're hitting on all cylinders, when the income statement comes at the end of the month or the year, whatever, the profit and the growth should be fine. So.
So another part of your role, of course, is growing the next generation of folks that are going to hopefully take you up on your job right now, and as you move into retirement or whatever your next role is. How do you identify those young folks? And you got maybe a young engineer in the audience today. How do you identify who has that leadership potential, and what are the things you're looking for? What are you seeing in those folks as you look at the people who are trying to grow the right way?
I think, when I see someone that, from a leadership perspective, when we're talking about leadership now, um, someone who's can read the room, who's got an emotional intelligence, who can understand, because you deal with a lot of different personalities. If you're in a construction trailer, and you've got a structural engineer, an architect, a contractor, the code official, the owner, you got a lot of different perspectives in that room with a lot of different things that are motivating them. And that's, being able to understand what's driving other people. So having a high emotional intelligence and reading the room is important, because it's the same thing when you're in the conference room in your company, your office, and you're working with a project team. everyone has different motivators. Everyone's different, and being able to adapt and adjust your how you deal with and work with different people is really important to leading a successful team. So I look for that those types of personality traits. Communication skills are really important. Um, especially written communication skills. Being able to explain a really highly technical issue to someone who doesn't have the technical background, right? If you can explain something that's highly technical and put it into layman's terms so that they can understand it, is a skill and really helps in that those types of roles. So, I mean, there's a number of different things that I look for, but I think you can go to schools all over the country and go to the career fairs and meet a lot of really, really smart people, a lot of really smart engineers. They can solve all sorts of problems. But when it comes to leadership and management, um, there's another skill there that really helps you if you have that.
Yeah. And audience, just a reminder, we do take questions, so feel free to throw a couple in the chat. I haven't seen any yet, but feel free to do that. You mentioned other places. You're a Clarkson grad. You hire some Clarkson grads. What's the differentiator that Clarkson brings to the marketplace in your mind, specific to your area, or just generally you're seeing in people you're interacting with? What's the differentiator, and what are we bringing as an institution to the kind of this construction world?
Well, Clarkson, we've hired a number of folks from Clarkson over the years, and I think there's a secret sauce there somewhere that Clarkson has that it's not like, kind of getting to back what I was saying earlier. It's not just about the technical competency, right? Doing the math, solving the problem. There's more to the solving the problem on paper, working with teams, managing through issues. Clarkson's, the folks that come out of Clarkson, I mean, I think you know this, and probably someone else knows better than I do. There's, a very high percentage of Clarkson graduates that are senior managers, C-suite type folks across the country. And that's because a lot of them have those types of skills I was saying earlier, and a lot of that's fostered and developed at Clarkson. That I certainly I didn't know it at the time, but I realized it looking back that was something that was very helpful to me and how Clarkson approaches things and provides young people who have a technical brain to expand and work with people on problems. So
Great.
That's my best answer for that.
Well, my prompting of questions is, of course, brought in a flurry of questions here from the audience. One of them was back to Clarkson. Is there any favorite Clarkson memory you want to share?
Favorite Clarkson memory? Oh, geez. Boy, I'll have to say going to the hockey games at Walker Arena was probably high on my list. My first year as a freshman, I lived in the pit. It was an all-male dorm. I don't know, do they still call it the pit?
It's still called that. Most people really don't know why, but
yeah. Well, I mean, I was back in the mid late '80s when I was there. So and we would walk across to Walker Arena, and really tiny barn and go to the hockey games, which was a lot of fun. I took my daughter. My daughter went to Michigan State, and she graduated this spring. And we went up earlier this year for a hockey game, and it was Michigan State's a much different experience than Clarkson, right? So East Lansing versus Potsdam, same temperature, same weather, but different experience with the number of students there. But I really have to say that going to those Clarkson hockey games have to be some of my favorite memories. So
cool. Another question, and I'll wrap up with a kind of a closing question, is what's one piece of advice someone gave you that made you successful in your career?
Oh, well, I'm going to say that my father, and I think about this often. When I was a kid, the advice my father gave me, I don't know if this is advice, it's more of a planting of a seed. And we literally had pillowcases and coffee cups. I think he must have got them at some conference that he went to, right? So I'm a kid, I don't know. But he comes home and on the pillowcase, it's a white pillowcase with blue letters, and it just says, attitude is everything. And on the flip side, I don't know if it was a flip side or there was maybe something else. Excellence pays dividends. So these two statements, and it's not advice, but it's maybe advising or making you understand or pointing out the importance of attitude and doing the best you can, right? So attitude is everything, um, and excellence pays dividends. As a kid growing up, I thought that was annoying, right, as a kid. But now I find myself being annoying and telling people the same things, my kids and people that I work with. But I'd have to say that if I were going to give, other than that, if I were giving advice, I do talk to a lot of students in at different schools, giving different types of lectures. The one thing that I tell folks getting into this industry is ask a lot of questions. There's and get involved in the industry. So it's such a construction and engineering. It's such a broad area. There's so many different things that you don't realize. Even like me, I didn't realize it when I graduated with a degree. There were so many different paths. So get involved with industry associations and not just go to a lunch, but get on a committee, meet people, expand your network outside of where you work. Ask a lot of questions. Try to understand if there's multiple departments in your company and they do something different down the hall. Go to lunch with some of those folks and say, "What do you guys do?" And try to understand the different parts of the business. And for me, that was a big deal because I was started learning as geotechnical engineer, but then I started getting into environmental consulting, and I started getting into roofing inspection, and I started getting into construction inspection. So I was exposed to a lot of different things that helped me choose what I liked, where I was passionate and the paths that I took.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Well, and it does remind me that the first time we actually met in DC was at a SAME lunch at Fort Belvoir, where you were presenting on the 9/11 response.
Oh, okay.
That
Yeah,
was
that's right.
this is the Wayback Machine. So for those that don't know, Leo and I lived in Washington D.C. for about 8 years, and Leo and I overlapped while we were there. And yeah, that's how I think I first met you in town. Was at an SAME, so one of those professional associations, and you
Right.
you weren't just hey, show up. You were, ECS was sponsor. You had many members that were also part of the company that were from other aspects. So I met Stanley among other people there, right? And so, really an opportunity to really grow and get to know the industry in lots of
Yep.
different ways. And that's a great organization. And many other great organizations, ASCE and so on and so forth, that are professional organizations to be a part of. The other thing we hold in common, and this is our last question, it has nothing to do with anything in the sheet, is what you don't know about Leo and I, we're both rabid Caps fans. So the real question, Leo, are the Caps going to get the Stanley Cup this year? And what's it looking like? Help us out with this.
You know, that's I don't want to say. I think the real question is, will Alex Ovechkin come back for another season next year? I think they're doing really well, but it's so early. It's fun to watch. It's especially fun to watch Alex Ovechkin at the tail end of his career. Having been fortunate enough to see him start his career here, and I've been a season ticket holder from beginning to end. It's a lot of fun, and I'll just cross my fingers and wait until April, May, June, see how it goes.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, what's also nice is there's always been a kind of a Clarkson connection with the Caps in different ways. Chris Clark, when we were both there, was the captain of the team,
Yep.
floor mate of mine here at Clarkson when I was in school. And there's also that, and the women just played at MedStar Capital Iceplex this
Yeah.
past week over the Thanksgiving break. So there's always been a little bit of a connection, a couple people in the system. So always great to have that connection as well. Well, thank you, Leo, for your time. Any final words before we close out?
No, I appreciate this opportunity to share my story. Thank you for having me. It's an honor. And let's go tech.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you everyone for listening and joining us today. I enjoyed the conversation. I think Leo enjoyed the conversation. Hopefully you enjoyed the conversation. We'll return next fall for another series of profiles in construction, bringing you real insights from industry professionals who are shaping the world we live in, literally. Stay tuned this spring as we host our annual special Topics in Construction Engineering Management lecture series on Tuesday evenings in January through April. By the way, both Leo and I are going to be featured speakers during that, I understand, based upon the lineup we have. So you'll get to see Leo again. You can see me again. Find us on LinkedIn to stay connected. We're always putting our stuff out there through our social media and the CEM program. At Clarkson University, we build your future. Our construction engineering management program has programs in undergraduate and graduate education and boasts a 100% placement rate of graduates year after year. Clarkson University is a proven leader in technological education, research, innovation, and sustainable economic development. Clarkson faculty have a direct impact on more than 7,800 students annually through nationally recognized undergraduate and graduate STEM designated degrees in engineering, business, science, and health professions, as well as executive education and industry relevant credentials, as well as K through 12 STEM programs. Alumni, like Leo, earn salaries among the top 2% of the nation, and 1 in 5 already leads in the C-suite, as Leo already mentioned. So thanks again for joining us. If you have any other questions or want to find out more, please visit us at clarkson.edu/CEM. Thank you all and have a great afternoon.